We look at the British royal family and see permanence. We see castles that have stood for 1,000 years. We see crowns that pass from generation to generation, unbroken. We assume that the royal vault is a fortress of eternity, a place where history is preserved in amber, safe from the ravages of time and the whims of fashion. But this is a lie. The truth is that the royal collection is a living, breathing, and sometimes brutal organism. It eats its own. For every glittering tiara you see on the head of the Princess of Wales today, there is a ghost standing behind her. There are masterpieces, jewels worth millions, drenched in history, that have simply ceased to exist. They haven't just been hidden, they have been dismantled, cannibalized, sold to the highest bidder by cash-strapped aristocrats, or perhaps most tragically of all, stripped of their diamonds to feed the creation of something newer, shinier, and more fashionable. We often imagine Queen Mary, the grand matriarch of the House of Windsor, as the great collector, and she was. But she was also the great destroyer. She treated priceless heirlooms not as sacred relics, but as Lego sets, ripping them apart with a terrifying lack of sentimentality to build pieces that suited her own majestic vision. And then there are the tragedies, the jewels that survived revolutions and wars, only to fall victim to the auction block, the sapphires that were sold to pay death duties, the amethysts that vanished from the neck of a queen only to reappear decades later on the red carpet of a fashion gala. Today, we are opening the lost files. We are going to track down the treasures that have vanished into the black hole of history. We will uncover the Frankenstein jewels born from destruction, the exiles sold for cash, and the sleeping beauties that might, just might, still be hiding in the dark, waiting for a miracle. These are the royal jewels we may never see again. Chapter 1. The Frankenstein Jewels, Dismantled and Recycled. To understand the fate of the missing jewels, we must first understand the psychology of the woman who shaped the collection, Queen Mary of Teck. To the modern eye, dismantling a historic tiara feels like vandalism. It feels like taking a pair of scissors to a Renaissance painting. But Queen Mary did not see it that way. To her, jewelry was engineering. It was architecture. And if a building was no longer functional, if a tiara was too small, too clunky, or simply not grand enough, she had no qualms about knocking it down to build a skyscraper. She was the creator of what I call the Frankenstein jewels, pieces born from the graveyard of other forgotten treasures. Let us begin with a victim that few people even remember, the Surrey fringe tiara. The year was 1893. Princess May of Teck, the future Queen Mary, was marrying the Duke of York. It was the wedding of the decade. The gifts poured in from every corner of the empire. The county of Surrey, eager to show its loyalty, presented the bride with a magnificent diamond-fringed tiara. It was a classic design, a row of diamond spikes radiating like a sunburst. It was elegant. It was valuable. And for a brief moment, it seemed to be a favorite. We have photographs of the young princess wearing it in the early years of her marriage. It framed her face beautifully. But Mary was a woman of colossal ambition. As she moved closer to the throne, she decided that elegant was not enough. She wanted imperial. In 1913, Queen Mary commissioned Gerard to create a new tiara, the lover's knot. But diamonds are expensive, even for a queen. Instead of buying new stones, Mary looked at her collection and made a cold calculation. The Surrey fringe was expendable. Sometime around 1914, the Surrey fringe quietly disappeared. It was dismantled. Its diamonds were pried from their settings and repurposed. Some historians believe the stones were used to top up the girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara, replacing the original pearls with diamonds to make it taller and sharper. Others suggest they went into the new lover's knot. Regardless of where the stones ended up, the Surrey fringe was effectively murdered. A wedding gift from an entire county was erased from history because it served a better purpose as spare parts. The sacrifice of the Boucheron loop. But if the Surrey fringe was a tragedy, the fate of the Boucheron loop tiara was a crime against art. This was arguably one of the most beautiful and unique pieces Mary ever owned. Commissioned in 1902 from the French house of Boucheron, it was a marvel of fluidity. Unlike the rigid, spiky tiaras of the Victorian era, the loop tiara was all romance. It featured sweeping loops of diamonds that curled like ribbons, enclosing large, round, brilliant diamonds. It was airy, feminine, and distinctly French. It was also made from a very special source. The diamonds came from the De Beers Company, a gift to Mary during her tour of South Africa. It was a tiara born of the empire's wealth. Mary wore it for her coronation portraits. It should have been a legacy piece, passed down to Elizabeth, then to Diana, then to Catherine. It would have looked spectacular on modern hair. But Mary had a problem. In 1911, she was going to India for the Delhi Durbar, the grand ceremony proclaiming her empress. She needed a crown that could be seen from the back of an elephant. She needed height. She needed drama. She needed the Delhi Durbar tiara, and she needed diamonds to make it. So the exquisite Boucheron loop was sacrificed. Just 10 years after it was made, this masterpiece was broken apart. Its graceful ribbons were melted down, and its blazing South African diamonds were reset into the massive, fortress-like Delhi Durbar tiara. The irony. Mary eventually tired of the Delhi Durbar tiara too, loaning it to her daughter-in-law and never wearing it again. She destroyed a timeless French masterpiece to build a temporary monument to imperial vanity. Today, the Boucheron loop exists only in black and white photographs, a ghost of what could have been. The lost Collingwood. Finally, we must speak of the Collingwood fringe. This jewel suffered an identity crisis before its death. It was a wedding gift from Queen Victoria herself to Mary in 1893. But it wasn't just a tiara, it was a convertible piece. It could be worn as a diamond fringe necklace or mounted on a frame as a halo. It was a perfectly serviceable historic jewel. But Mary was a perfectionist. She already had the Surrey fringe before she destroyed it, and later she commissioned her own, sharper, more geometric fringe tiara in 1919, the one Queen Elizabeth later wore on her wedding day. The Collingwood was the third wheel. It was redundant, and in Queen Mary's vault, redundancy was a death sentence. In 1919, the Collingwood fringe met its end. Mary decided she wanted a newer, more fashionable fringe tiara, the one we know and love today. To get it, she cannibalized the Collingwood. The diamonds given by Queen Victoria were stripped out and reset into the new frame. So, when you look at Queen Elizabeth's wedding photos or see Princess Beatrice wearing that fringe tiara today, you are looking at the ghost of the Collingwood. The metal is new, but the soul of the diamonds belongs to a jewel that was sacrificed on the altar of modernization. These stories tell us something profound about the royal collection. We tend to view it as a museum, but under Queen Mary, it was a workshop. She understood that for the monarchy to survive, it had to look magnificent today, even if that meant destroying the treasures of yesterday. But while Mary destroyed jewels to build better ones, there is a darker way for a jewel to leave the family. Sometimes they aren't repurposed. They are simply lost. They are sold to pay debts, traded for silence, or auctioned off when the fairy tale ends. We are now entering the territory of the great sell-off, the scandalous, tragic, and sometimes necessary auctions that have scattered priceless pieces of royal history to the four winds. These are the jewels that were not dismantled. They were betrayed. They left the family not to be reborn, but to be cashed in. The tragedy of the Poltimore. The most famous and perhaps most heartbreaking of these sales involves a jewel that became a symbol of a princess's rebellious spirit, the Poltimore tiara. This was not a Windsor jewel. It was an aristocratic masterpiece, created by Garrard in the 1870s for Lady Poltimore the wife of the second Baron Poltimore. It is an extraordinary creation, a graduated circlet of diamond-set floral and scroll motifs that can be broken apart and worn as a necklace, and 11 different brooches. It was bold, it was beautiful, and it was exactly the kind of grand, slightly theatrical piece that suited the glamorous, chain-smoking sister of the Queen, Princess Margaret. Margaret purchased the tiara at auction herself in 1959, just before the announcement of her engagement to Anthony Armstrong Jones. It was a declaration of independence. She didn't borrow a tiara from her sister's vault. She bought her own, and she made it immortal. The Poltimore became her signature, but its most legendary moment came in 1962. Margaret, staying at the Aga Khan's home, was photographed by her husband, Lord Snowdon, in a way that no royal had ever been seen before. She was in the bathtub, naked, with the massive, glittering Poltimore tiara perched perfectly on her head. The image was a scandal. It was an act of pure, decadent, aristocratic rebellion. The Poltimore was no longer just a tiara, it was a symbol of Margaret's untamable spirit. But fairy tales, especially Margaret's, rarely end well. When Princess Margaret died in 2002, her children, David, the Earl of Snowdon, and Lady Sarah Chatto, were faced with a brutal reality: a massive inheritance tax bill, estimated to be around £3 million. The family did not have the cash, so they did the unthinkable. They sold their mother's legacy. In 2006, the Poltimore tiara went up for auction at Christie's. The pre-sale estimate was around £200,000, but the world wanted a piece of the rebel princess. The bidding was furious. It finally sold for £926,400 to a private Asian collector, and it has not been seen in public since. The sale was a quiet tragedy. It was a sign that the old world of the aristocracy, where jewels were passed down for centuries, was dying. A piece of British history, a jewel that had seen the inside of both Buckingham Palace and a bathtub, was now locked in a private vault somewhere on the other side of the world, a ghost accessible only through old photographs. The Kent garage sale. If the Poltimore sale was a tragedy, the story of the Cambridge sapphires is a saga of slow, painful decline. This was a magnificent parure, a complete set of tiara, necklace, earrings, and brooches, all featuring stunning sapphires surrounded by diamonds. It had impeccable royal provenance, passing down from Queen Mary's family in the 19th century. Mary gave it to her new daughter-in-law, the glamorous Princess Marina, Duchess of Kent, as a wedding gift in 1934. For a generation, the Kent sapphires were a constant presence at state events, but the Kents were not the main line of the family. They were a branch, and as the decades passed, their financial situation became precarious. The dismantling began quietly. Sometime in the 1980s, the current Duke and Duchess of Kent sold the tiara. Then went the necklace, then the brooches. Piece by piece, the historic parure was broken up and sold off to anonymous buyers to fund the family's lifestyle. The sale was a source of quiet shame and, reportedly, great anger from Queen Elizabeth. To her, selling heirlooms was a betrayal of the family's legacy, but for the Kents, it was a matter of survival. The sapphires that had once graced the neck of a royal duchess were now scattered across the globe, their royal history erased. The Vogue mystery. And finally, the strangest sale of all, the one that blurs the line between royal collection and high fashion. This is the mystery of the amethyst tiara. Queen Mary, an avid auction-goer, purchased a beautiful amethyst and diamond parure, tiara, necklace, earrings, and brooch at a charity sale. She was photographed wearing the tiara at least twice. But Mary, it seems, was not a fan of purple. The tiara disappeared. Decades later, a stunning amethyst and diamond necklace appeared on Vogue editor Anna Wintour at a gala at the Victoria and Albert Museum. Jewelry experts squinted. They compared photographs. They came to a shocking conclusion. The necklace Anna Wintour was wearing appeared to be made from the dismantled elements of Queen Mary's lost amethyst tiara. How did this happen? The story is murky, but it seems that after Mary's time, the Queen Mother, who was also not a fan of amethysts, quietly sold off the parure. It was likely bought by a high-end jeweler who then dismantled the unfashionable tiara and created a modern necklace. These stories remind us that the vault is not impenetrable. Economics, taxes, and changing tastes can be as destructive as any revolution. But while some jewels were sold, there are others that suffered a different fate. They weren't broken. They weren't auctioned. They were simply lost. They exist on paper, in old inventories, but in the real world, they are ghosts. Next, we become detectives. We hunt for the jewels that are missing in action. There is a unique kind of frustration that grips a royal jewelry historian. It is the frustration of knowing that something exists, but having absolutely no proof of it in the modern world. We have photos. We have inventory lists written in fading ink. We have eyewitness accounts from 80 years ago. But the jewels themselves? They have vanished into the fog. These are not pieces that were publicly sold like the Poltimore. They are the ones that simply stopped appearing. Welcome to the cold cases of the royal collection. The Russian Ghost. Let us open the file on the sapphire sunray bandeau. This is a jewel that screams of mystery. Its design is unlike anything else in the British collection. It is a flexible band of diamonds arranged in a sunburst pattern, sharp geometric rays radiating outward from a central sapphire cluster. It has the distinct, chilly glamour of the Russian imperial court. The provenance is murky. Leslie Field, the doyen of royal jewelry writers, claimed it once belonged to the Dowager Empress Marie Feodorovna of Russia, the mother of the last Tsar. Queen Mary, ever the collector of Romanov tragedies, likely acquired it in the 1920s, but the real mystery begins with Princess Margaret. In the 1950s, Margaret adopted the sunray. It was perfect for her. It was spiky, modern, and a little dangerous. She wore it on her tour of the Caribbean in 1958. She wore it to state dinners. She even figured out how to detach the central sapphire and wear it as a brooch, a sure sign that she had intimate access to the piece. And then, abruptly, in the mid-60s, the sun set. The bandeau vanished. Margaret never wore it again. It was not sold in the famous Christie's auction after her death. It has not appeared on any of her children. It has not returned to the Queen's vault, or if it has been buried deep. Where is it? Did Margaret give it away privately? Was it broken down to create earrings for her daughter? The disappearance of a piece with such potent Russian history feels like a loose thread in the tapestry of the collection. The laurel wreath enigma. If the sunray is a ghost, our next piece is a legend. This is the Westminster laurel wreath tiara. This was a gift of staggering value. When Princess May, Queen Mary, married in 1893, the first Duke of Westminster, one of the richest men in the world, gave her a necklace of diamond laurel leaves. But Mary, ever the innovator, had it mounted on a frame to be worn as a bandeau tiara. It was exquisite. It looked like a victor's crown from ancient Rome, rendered in diamonds. Mary wore it in her early years, posing for official portraits with the laurel leaves crowning her high Edwardian hair. And then, silence. After Mary became queen in 1910, the laurel wreath disappears from the photographic record. It is never seen on the Queen Mother. It is never seen on Elizabeth. Here is the twist. The Duke of Westminster's family, the Grosvenors, possess their own famous laurel wreath tiara, the one worn by the current Duchess at her wedding. For years, people confused the two, but they are distinct. The royal one is missing. Did Mary dismantle it? It's possible. She was a Frankenstein, after all. But there is a tantalizing theory that it might still exist, intact. Some speculate it was returned to the Grosvenor family. Others believe it is simply lost in the sheer volume of Mary's collection. a tiara so forgotten that even the archivists have overlooked it. The unwanted crescent. Finally, we have a mystery that is less about where is it, and more about why does nobody want it? This is the Tech Crescent Tiara. We know exactly where this is. It is in the vault. It is listed on the loan sheet to Queen Camilla, and yet it is functionally missing because it is never worn. It has a design that is challenging. It consists of 3 diamond roses, separated by 20 diamond crescents. It can be worn with the crescents facing forward or backward. It is complex. It is busy. It belonged to Queen Mary's mother, the Duchess of Teck, a woman known for her girth and her love of food, who needed big jewels to match her presence. Mary inherited it, passed it to the Queen Mother, who wore it once in 1939, and then nothing. For 85 years, this tiara has been shunned. Why? Is it physically uncomfortable? Is the frame poorly constructed? Or is it simply ugly? In the world of royal jewels, ugly is a subjective term, but unworn is an objective fact. The Tech Crescent is the unwanted stepchild of the collection. It is a piece that exists in limbo, too valuable to destroy, but apparently too awkward to wear. It is a missing jewel that is hiding in plain sight, rejected by 4 generations of royal women. These mysteries haunt us. They remind us that for all the pomp and documentation, the royal collection is full of holes. It is a collection defined as much by what is missing as by what is present. But sometimes a jewel isn't missing because it's lost. It's missing because it's simply weird. There is a point where jewelry ceases to be an accessory and becomes something else entirely. It becomes engineering. It becomes sculpture. It becomes a headache. In the Victorian and Edwardian eras, complexity was a virtue. A jewel wasn't just a tiara. It was a necklace, a brooch, a corsage ornament, and a set of hairpins, all held together by a terrifying system of screws, springs, and frames. But as the 20th century progressed, and queens started dressing themselves without the help of 5 ladies-in-waiting, these complex mechanisms became liabilities. The unwearable art refers to the pieces that are trapped in the vault, not because they are lost, but because they are simply too complicated, too strange, or too fragile for the modern world. The transformer, nightmare. The supreme example of this over-engineering is the Ladies of England tiara. This was a wedding gift to the future Queen Mary in 1893, presented by a committee of 650 ladies of England. It was a gesture of national love, and the jewelers, Hunt and Roskell, clearly wanted to give the ladies their money's worth. They created a monster of versatility. It was a diamond tiara. But wait, it could also be worn as a necklace, and if you didn't like necklaces, you could unscrew the center and wear it as a corsage ornament. The leftover bits, they became sprays to pin in your hair. It was the Swiss Army knife of diamonds. Queen Mary, who loved mechanics, adored it. We see photos of her wearing it in all its configurations. But there was a catch. To switch between modes required a toolkit and the patience of a saint. You had to dismantle the frame, unscrew tiny components, and hope you didn't lose a diamond in the process. When Queen Mary died, the instruction manual seemed to die with her. The tiara disappeared from public view. It is likely that her successors, queens who preferred to just put a tiara on and go, looked at this box of screws and springs and said, "No thank you." It is a victim of its own cleverness, a jewel so adaptable that it became too exhausting to use. It sits in the dark, a dismantled puzzle that no one has the time to solve. The crown that isn't a crown. Then there is the piece that isn't really jewelry at all. It is pure art, and that is its tragedy. This is the Muscat tiara. It is arguably the most beautiful object in the entire collection. Given to a young Queen Victoria in 1838 by the Sultan of Muscat, it is a gold coronet featuring 12 panels shaped like paisley leaves set with rubies and diamonds. But the real secret is on the inside. The back of the tiara is decorated with exquisite hand-painted enamel miniatures. It is a masterpiece of Persian craftsmanship. But here is the problem. You can't wear it. The shape is wrong. It sits on the head like a bucket or a hat rather than a tiara. It doesn't grip the hair. And those beautiful enamels? They are hidden against the skull. To wear it is to hide its best feature. Even Queen Victoria, who loved a gift, struggled with it. Prince Albert tried to fix it by adding pearls, but it remained awkward. So the Muscat tiara became a museum piece. It has transitioned from the jewelry box to the display case. It sits in the grand vestibule at Windsor Castle, admired by tourists, but never touched by a queen. It is unwearable in the truest sense, an object of beauty that failed at its primary job. But not every story in the vault ends in darkness. Sometimes a jewel can sleep for 100 years, only to be woken up by the right woman at the right time. For decades, royal watchers grew cynical. We assumed that if a jewel hadn't been seen since the 1920s, it was gone, sold, dismantled, lost. We accepted the silence as permanent. But recently, the steel doors have begun to creak open. The new generation of Windsor women, Queen Camilla and Catherine, the Princess of Wales, are proving to be the Indiana Joneses of the jewelry world. They are digging deep into the dusty corners of the archives and pulling out treasures that we thought were dead forever. These are the miracles, the proof that nothing in the royal collection is ever truly gone. It is just waiting. The 100-year sleep, the most shocking resurrection of the century, happened on a rainy Tuesday in November 2023. The occasion was a state banquet for the President of South Korea. The world waited to see what the Princess of Wales would wear. Would it be the lover's knot again? The lotus flower? When Catherine stepped out of the car, the internet broke. On her head was a delicate floral garland of diamonds that hadn't been seen in public for exactly 100 years. This was the Strathmore Rose Tiara. Its story is the ultimate fairy tale of patience. It was a wedding gift to the Queen Mother, then Lady Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon, in 1923 from her father, the Earl of Strathmore. It was the height of 1920s chic, designed to be worn low across the forehead as a bandeau. The young Duchess loved it. She wore it for her official portraits, creating the defining image of her youth. But by the 1930s, the flapper era was over. The rose tiara was put in a box. The Queen Mother never wore it again. Queen Elizabeth II never wore it. Diana never wore it. For a century, it sat in the dark. Most historians assumed it was too fragile to survive. The floral prongs were delicate. The mechanism was old. We thought it had rusted away or been broken down for parts. But Kate proved us wrong. She didn't just wear it, she reinvented it. She didn't wear it as a dated 1920s bandeau. She positioned it high on her head, nestling the diamond roses into her hair like a living crown. It looked fresh. It looked modern. By bringing back the Strathmore Rose, Kate sent a powerful message. I honor the past, but I am not trapped by it. It was a miracle of preservation and a masterclass in timing. The return of the Red Queen. If the Strathmore Rose was a gentle surprise, the return of the Oriental Circlet was a thunderclap. This is a jewel of immense power. Designed by Prince Albert for Queen Victoria in 1853, it was a love letter in rubies and diamonds. Albert designed it with lotus flowers, an exotic Eastern motif that reflected the expanding empire. It was Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother's absolute favorite. She wore it constantly in her old age. It became the granny's tiara. When she died in 2002, the tiara passed to Queen Elizabeth II, and the Queen ignored it. She wore it only once in Malta in 2005. For the rest of her reign, this massive ruby masterpiece sat in the dark. It seemed too big. too red, too associated with the Queen Mother's bouffant hair. But in December 2025, at the diplomatic reception, the Princess of Wales walked out wearing the Oriental circlet. It was a revelation. Kate paired it with a sleek red gown. The rubies, which looked old-fashioned on the Queen Mother, looked fierce and majestic on Kate. She carried the weight of the history and the literal weight of the gold and stones with effortless grace. She proved that a difficult tiara is only difficult until the right woman puts it on. She saved the Oriental circlet from becoming a museum piece and returned it to the active line of duty. The hope for the future. These resurrections give us hope. They remind us that the lost files are not closed cases. If the Strathmore Rose can survive 100 years of darkness, what else is in there? Could the Tech Crescent tiara, the ugly duckling of the collection, find its swan in Princess Charlotte? Could the sapphire sunray bandeau, missing since Margaret's heyday, suddenly appear on a royal bride in 20 years? Could the Ladies of England tiara, that complex transformer, be reassembled by a future queen who loves engineering? The royal vault is not a tomb. It is a deep, patient ocean. Treasures sink to the bottom, disappearing from sight for generations. But the tide always turns. And when it does, the jewels wash back up onto the shore, glittering as if they never left. The story of the royal jewels is a story of survival. Kings die, empires fall, fashions change. But the diamonds wait. And as long as there is a queen to wear them, the lost jewels will always have a chance to be found.